Hello everyone, Mrs. Red here from Mrs. Red's Art Room. Doing a little bit of a different video this time, so you don't get to see me first, which no one really needs to see me first. I'm just basically going straight into it, and I'll just talk through, and if I run out of things to say, I will put on some music for you. It is a 19-minute video, so I don't have a plan of what to talk about. But anyway, this project that I'm doing is purely for fun. It was done 2 days before Christmas, or it could have possibly been on Christmas Eve that I started it, and it's about an hour and a half to 2 hour project all up, just doing it in my sketchbook, and pretty much just knew what I wanted to do in regards to doing the Protea flower. I've just chosen an image off Pinterest, and like I said, I knew what I wanted to do in my head. I just didn't know if it was going to turn out. But the nicest thing about this is that I don't have a plan for doing it. So if you've watched a lot of my other videos, you know that I am an art teacher and I do a lot of online art teaching. So 90% of the artworks that I do, I'm doing with the mind of teaching others. So it has to be quite simple with basic instructions to follow along. Whereas this one is in my sketchbook, and it is basically for me just to sit down and play and see what happens. I guess when you're doing something like this, the main thing is to know that you're not doing a finished artwork. It's in your sketchbook, so it's time to play, experiment, and just have fun with what you're doing. So I'm using the watercolours first, always using Winsor Newton Artist watercolours, because they are the very best. They've got the best colour. They're light fast. I know it's only my sketchbook, but it just so happened, excuse me, that is the colour. That's the paints that I chose. I do have student grade ones that are in the discs as well, but I wanted to go with the Winsor Newton. The other reason for it is because I know that I'm going to be putting pen over the top of them, and the student grade ones that are in the discs can be a little bit gritty when they dry, and pens generally don't like to be done over the top of it. So you will note that I have let the green dry before I went on to the pink, and the reason for that is because green and pink in watercolour land do not like each other. So I was going to end up with blends of brown, which I just didn't really want in this, with what I had in mind of what was going to happen with this. And if I could jump forward to what the end result is, exactly what I had in my head is exactly what I've done. So I was pretty happy with it in the end. Yeah, so I'm just laying colour pretty much where it would go, and loosely as well. I really want it to be loose so that I actually work the sketch over the top of the colour and not be fussed if the colour isn't exactly where it should be, and if the flower doesn't meet the outside edges of the colour that's been laid down. What else can I talk about? The sketchbook that I'm using is also Winsor & Newton, and it's one that has a sheet of tracing paper between each page. So really good to use for mixed media. Watercolour paper is a great mixed media paper to use, because obviously you can always use a thick paper for mixed media, but if you're using watercolour, you really need to be able to let the watercolour effects happen properly. So yeah, it's an A4 It's hard bound as well, but it does lie flat. And this is probably only the third page in as well, so it's quite new. Underneath the palette there is a very unfinished idea I had for a painting. And I started it while I was listening to a Zoom meeting, probably mid-December, and I just never went back to it. So I still might. It was a beach scene of a rock wall and swimmers, which happened to be my swim group. They were swimming around the rock wall, and it's just a really beautiful photo that was taken on drone. And so, yeah, so you can see that blue that's coming through the palette there. It was only a small painting, only took up half that page. You can see it there. So I really liked what was happening there, and I need to go back to it. This is also something that comes across in a lot of my artworks. I do like to do a bit of a splatter here and there. I think I mentioned before that this was roughly a 1.5 to 2 hour video or artwork that I've created. I don't know if that's like a stupid amount of time to do a artwork in your sketchbook, but I'm a very, very slow artist, so everything I do takes me long time, and I have to be very aware of trying not to get too detailed with things. So now I'm sketching up this, I don't really know how to pronounce it, a Protea, the Protea flower, Protea, which I think is the national flower for South Africa, if I'm correct. And then I think it's New South Wales here in Australia that might have the Banksia as their state flower. So the Banksia does look similar to the Protea. Using my Rotring pens here, I've recently revived them. I was watching one of the many artists that I follow on Instagram, and she was doing a doodling with her Rotring pens, and I thought, I have not used my Rotring pens for over 20 years. So with that, when dug them out and managed to get all the nibs off the cartridges. It did take a while. I needed some pliers to do that. The nibs are metal, so that's what makes these excuse me. I've had laryngitis a week ago. One moment, I'm just going to pause. All right, I'm back again now. I had laryngitis a week ago, so I'm just still got the effects of that. What was I saying about the Rotring pens? So I soaked them in water for 24 hours, then tried to clean them and then put cartridges in the back of them, but I just couldn't get them to work. So they're obviously got dried ink inside. It's got a metal nib to it, so that's the main thing, is that you can't really damage that nib unless you actually whack it down unintentionally. It's the only way you can break them. But they are a cartridge pen, so you can change the cartridges to different inks. They're the best on the market. I don't think you can actually get higher than a Rotring pen. Which one's the ones that I've got? It's the Rapidograph. So the Rapidograph is the one that takes the cartridge, and then there is another one which the name escapes me, and it has it's a cartridge that you don't replace. You absorb ink into it from an ink bottle. But I can't remember what they're called. They're also doing disposable pens now as well, which are really nice to use. The only problem that I've found with them so far is that the ink in the disposable pen does take at least a minute to dry, so you don't want to smudge your work. You don't want to close a page after you're just using one, and you wouldn't want to use water. Probably I'd be going for an hour if you're going to be using watercolour with your Rotring pens. The throwaway pen, I would be letting the ink really dry before I was using watercolour or ink over the top. So the pencils I've now gone on to, again, I'm just wanting to create a bit of depth now, and but not take away the overall look of the watercolour either. I really like that. So these pencils are the Faber-Castell Polychromos, and they are, I'm going to go, hang on, I know how old they are. They're going to be over 30 years old now. I turned 50 at the beginning of this week, and I know I had these before I was 20. I think my dad bought me a set in year 12. I can't remember if it was these ones or the watercolour ones. And then either I bought them or I asked them for a birthday Christmas present. So I do have the timber cases of both the normal colours and the watercolours in the Polychromos. And 30 years on, some of them have been replaced. That is the good thing about those expensive pencils, is that you can buy them individually. But they're so beautiful to use, and I really wanted to use them. And I did test the pencils going down before because I wanted to do doodling over the top to finish it off. So I did test my Rotring pens, making sure that they were happy to go over the top of pencil and watercolour, which they were, and it's worked out perfectly. Some of your throwaway pens, which your drawing pens, so your uni pin, your Pigma Micron, your Staedtler, they can be a bit fussy when it comes to going over the top of another media. They just tend to not want to work as well. So that's another benefit of the Rotring. But the Rotring pens themselves are over $100 Australian each. But you know what? I've had mine now for 30 years. And yes, I did have to replace the actual nibs, which didn't cost a great deal. I can't remember now how much they cost. And I did buy some Rotring ink cleaner as well. So I still might try and get some of those old nibs back to life again, which would be good, because then I can put like maybe a white ink into it. So the pen that I'm using here is the 0.35, so it's quite fine. They do go up to, although it's been discontinued. What size is this one? So this one is a 1 that I'm looking at now, an actual 1, the weight of the nib, which is quite thick. Worked well for a portrait, commission portrait of a dog that I've just done just before Christmas. It was nice because I needed to have a big pen to doing that. It was like a continuous line drawing. But yeah, this one is the, I think it's the second finest that you can get, the 0.35, and then you've got the 0.25. I believe there could be now one that's even finer than the 0.25. The 0.25, it's really hard to see the nib. It's just so fine in its little case. I'm really happy with what I'm doing here with the doodling on the petals. Not so happy with the end result with the leaves, but it's all about experimentation. When you're working in your sketchbook, you are not doing finished artworks, you are experimenting and possibly gaining ideas for future artworks. So I didn't want to overthink what I was going to do with the leaves, but I didn't want to repeat what I'm doing with the petals. And I really like the centre of the flower and the petals that I've done. with this. So therapeutic as well. Like, there's not a lot of thought gone into the doodling part of this because it is just lines, but therapeutic wise, just, yeah, really good for your mental health. Now this video is being created at the end of 2022, and starting next month, so in a couple of days, on January 2023, is a new course that I am starting called Sketchbook Diaries. So it's an online course. There's going to be 2 group calls where we get together over a Zoom call. We go over some art skills, any questions that you've got, and basically a 45-minute session of sitting there doing some drawing, sketching, all in your sketchbook. And then also included in the month is a half-hour lesson with me as well, where you can show me what you're doing artwork-wise. It doesn't have to be what we're working on that month. It could be your own personal project. So the idea behind Sketchbook Diaries is basically to remember that with every artwork that we're doing, there is art skills that you need to practice, learn, and just work on in a sketchbook with the mindset of it's not a finished art piece. It's so important to play in a sketchbook. Whenever you're thinking of doing an art piece, well, I would think that it would be quite frightening to, if I was to do this, for example, and put it straight onto illustration board or a piece of Archer's watercolour paper with the intention of framing it, like it would frighten the crap out of me, because I don't know what I'm going to end up with. And as it turns out, I don't like the leaves. I don't like what I've done with the leaves. I would have preferred to have done, I don't know, something like little circles or something. And yeah, if I'd done this as a finished art piece without practicing and trying and experimenting, then it would not have worked out at all, because your mindset of it is definitely, you're just not relaxed. I'm just letting the pen go, just not really putting much thought in it. And if I was to do another one, which I definitely will because I absolutely loved the end piece, I would do something different for those leaves. But if I'm to do another one, it will be again in my sketchbook. The commission piece I've just done for a portrait of a dog was of a greyhound, and the brief was a line drawing with watercolour over the top using black, which I've used as I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called a neutral grey or something. Like, it's a really, really dark grey, and purple and green. Now, purple and green watercolour, they do not like each other. So I had to be very careful and make sure that the colours had dried before I went on to the other one. I can't believe that I've spoken for 19 minutes. This video is about to finish. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. There's going to be plenty more of these because I've really enjoyed doing this, because this was for me. And yeah, I've even been able to chat for 19 minutes. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.